Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and welcome to all the beautiful people of Houston tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for our spring fundraiser and movie night. It has been a tradition for our fellow Houstonians to join our gala year after year. But as you all know, the past year has not been the same, whether it's here in Texas or anywhere around the world. We always have a physical in-person event, and it has always been the highlight of the year. But as all of you know, because of COVID-19, we simply could not do our big annual in-person gala. I remember being at one of Houston's glamorous galas in 2019, and I met some amazing people. I can say with experience that the people of Houston are very warm and loving, and I loved being there. I wish that I could be physically present again tonight, but hopefully sometime soon we will be able to reconvene in person. Now, that Houston gala that I went to happened to come after I had the opportunity to visit one of the TCF schools in Karachi. It was the first time that I was able to go in person to see the work of TCF. And when I was walking those hallways and inside of those classrooms, what has always stayed with me was just how happy the children were to be there. I remember talking to some of the kids, and they told me that they looked forward to coming to school every day. They talked about how excited they were to learn. They showed me their books, and there was just such a big smile that they had on their faces. And you know what, it was really memorable for me because look, there are a lot of us who often have taken education for granted. I mean, those of us who, had the opportunity to go to school and didn't really think twice about it, we would kind of roll our eyes, and sometimes we'd try and make excuses not to have to go to school. But these children, it meant so much for them to be able to be there and to learn inside of those classrooms. So that really, to me, underscored just how important the work of TCF is, and we look forward to being able to highlight that throughout this evening. Now, it is a good thing that we have still managed to gather today to support education for our most deserving children in Pakistan who need us now more than ever. COVID-19 has affected schools all around the world, and that is no different in Pakistan. So we truly appreciate that you were able to join us for what is going to be a different kind of event. Thank you to our Houston community for always supporting us every year and for joining us today, this evening, for yet another exciting moment. Now, for all of our supporters who couldn't join us physically in person, but who are watching at home online, thank you also for being with us. We miss you here, and we truly wish that we could gather together in a physical setting where we could take pictures and take selfies and have fun with our friends and family like we always do. But we still have a great program this evening. Shortly, I will be speaking with Abdullah Jafri and Riaz Kamlani, and we also have our fundraising ahead, as well as a comedy movie lined up for all of you. So before we begin, let me share some important information about TCF. The TCF story starts in August 1995, when 6 friends and concerned citizens were tired with the situation prevailing in Pakistan, especially with respect to its children, and they decided to do something that would impact thousands of individuals. The choice that they made was to bring about positive social change through education. 25 years later, TCF is now one of Pakistan's leading organizations in the field of education. TCF has built 1,652 schools and currently has 266,000 students enrolled. About 41,521 students have graduated from TCF schools. The TCF USA, on the other hand, has built 283 schools and educating more than 65,000 students. TCF USA has more than 40 chapters all across the United States, and Houston is one of its largest. The Houston chapter has been working tirelessly for more than a decade to educate our most deserving children in Pakistan. The Houston chapter volunteers are some of our amazing individuals who work nonstop to support the cause of education. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing so much for our kids who deserve to live out their dreams, which can only be made possible through access to education. As I mentioned earlier, we will be talking to Abdullah Jaffrey and Riaz Kamlani, and it is now time for me to invite them to talk about the education crisis in Pakistan and what TCF is doing to continue educating children despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And now let me introduce our wonderful panelists for this evening. Riaz Kamlani has been associated with TCF and the nonprofit sector more broadly for more than a decade. Currently, he leads the initiatives that deepen the impact of TCF's efforts, and he plays an integral role in sustaining the movement and retaining its true essence. He also served as the chairperson for the Punjab Examination Commission as a nominee of TCF. Riaz Kamlani has also served in senior management roles in the oil industry, and he has played a vital role in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic over the past year and is working hard with his team to ensure continuity of learning at schools, and that's something that we're going to be talking about with him in more detail. Now, Abdullah Jaffrey needs no introduction. I know all of you know him very well. Those of us who know him can truly attest to how he is really more like a family member. To me at home, he's Bade Papa. Mr. Jaffrey serves as the chairman of Outreach and Fundraising Committee at TCF USA, in addition to his role as a board member since 2012. And he truly has a passion for education, and he's been an inspiration to many of us. So let's talk to them and ask how TCF has managed the challenges amid the COVID-19 pandemic, how it has affected schools and children, and what the way forward looks like. Assalamu alaikum, Riaz Sahab and Abdullah Sahab. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, it's been such a roller coaster ride all over the world. It's hard to believe it's been an entire year since really the whole world shut down, and all of us have made many adjustments due to COVID-19. And certainly that has been felt also in Pakistan very acutely. And, Riaz Sahab, if you can talk to us a little bit about what some of the immediate challenges were that TCF encountered in Pakistan, that would be great, because certainly it's been an unprecedented time for all of us who've had to adjust. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about what some of the immediate challenges were that you faced and how you handled them.
Gee, Sabrina. So as you rightly said, this is something that was absolutely new for the whole world, and Pakistan was no exception. We went into lockdown about March, same time last year. It doesn't seem like a year, but it was. So when lockdown happened, the first challenge that we really had in the communities where our schools are, was to ensure that people had livelihoods, that there was food on the table. Because we work in urban slums and distant rural areas, a lot of the people who send their children to our schools are daily wage earners. And because the economy really went through a complete shutdown, there were no opportunities to earn a livelihood. जिसको हम आम उर्दू में कहेंगे, लोगों के घरों के चूल्हे जो हैं वो बुझ गए थे। और हमारा पहला चैलेंज ये था कि किसी को पढ़ाने से पहले पेट में खाना होना जरूरी है, ताकि उन घरों के अंदर ये सहूलत मौजूद रहे। Now to address that, why was TCF able to do or able to conceive of a better program was by the fact that we are deeply embedded in the community. We have about 20,000 odd staff. They are all from the community. We have more than 30,000 alumni, a large number of which are still based in the community. So we were able to mobilize them, and what they were able to do was something different compared to any other relief operation. अगर आप किसी भी कच्ची आबादी में रिलीफ का ट्रक भिजवाएं तो सबसे पहले जो सबसे ज्यादा ताकतवर होता है वो रिलीफ हासिल कर लेता है और बोरी लेके चला जाता है। जो कमजोर होता है उस तक ही नहीं चीज पहुंच पाती। हमारे बच्चों ने और स्टाफ ने जो काम किया वो ये कि उन घरों की शनाख्त करी जहां तक मदद पहुंचना ज्यादा जरूरी था, जिन तक मदद नहीं पहुंच पाई। And to do that, we used two channels. Firstly, we mobilized a frame of mobile banking with a partner, so that cash in hand could be delivered, so that they could buy relief goods from within the communities. और जहाँ पे ज़रूरत इसकी मोबाइल बैंकिंग की अवेलेबिलिटी नहीं थी, we went with a partner to ensure that we were able to supply ration bags. And by doing these two things, we reached out to around 45,000 families over a span of something like 2 months. And this was the worst period of the lockdown. And it was by TCF's endeavor and by the support of TCF supporters from around the world that 45,000 families had sustenance during this very, very difficult period. Um, I would like perhaps to share what was that experience like. And we have a short video which describes it, which is from a neighborhood in Karachi called Rehigot. Now, Rehigot is a small community where the people who live there largely make their living from the sea. And that avenue of livelihood was also seized at that particular point. So we provided ration bags, and here is the story which tells you what happened, how it happened.
अप्रैल 4 और 5 को TCF ने कराची के इलाके रेहड़ी गोट में इमदाद पहुंचाने का काम किया। ये वो इलाका है जहां पे मोबाइल फ़ोन बैंकिंग की सहूलत मुहैया नहीं है, इसलिए जो भी इमदाद पहुंचनी थी वो राशन की सूरत में ही पहुंचनी थी। और इस सिलसिले में TCF का साथ दिया TCF के पार्टनर कराची रिलीफ ट्रस्ट यानी कि ART ने, जिन्होंने उस राशन का इंतज़ाम किया जो कि इस इलाके तक पहुँचाया गया। इस काम को बखूबी सर अंजाम देने का ज़िम्मा जो है वो TCF के एलुमनाई जो कि TCF के स्कूल से पढ़े हैं, उसी इलाके में रहते हैं, उनकी कायम करदा एक नौजवानों की तंजीम ने उठाया। रेहड़ी गोट में 17 हिस्से, जिसको रेहड़ी गोट में पहाड़े कहा जाता है, 17 पहाड़े मौजूद हैं और इस तंजीम के अंदर उन 17 पहाड़ों के नौजवान जो हैं वो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव के तौर पे बैठते हैं। इस तंजीम ने कहा कि जी ये काम हम मिलकर आपके साथ करेंगे और उन पहाड़ों में अपने अपने इलाके में उन लोगों की निशानदही करेंगे जो कि वाकई मुस्तहिक है, जिन तक कोई भी इमदाद नहीं पहुंच पाई है। और उन्होंने यही काम किया और इस तरह 506 ख़ानदान ऐसे थे जिनकी निशानदही की गई, जिनको इस इमदाद की अशद ज़रूरत थी। रेहड़ी गोट में ज़्यादातर लोगों का पेशा माहीगीरी है और ये इलाका शहर से कदरे हट कर है। सिंध हुकूमत के उसूल के तहत जहाँ जहाँ शहर में राशन तकसीम होना है वो रात के अंधेरे में यानी लगभग 3-4 बजे होना है। इलाके की मुसाफत को नज़र में रखते हुए कराची रिलीफ ट्रस्ट के वॉलंटियर्स और रेंजर्स के लिए मुमकिन ना था कि तमाम सामान वहाँ पे रात के उस पहर पहुँचाया जा सकता और ये एक बड़ा मसला दरपेश आया। इस मसले का हल उन्हीं नौजवानों ने जो इस तंजीम का हिस्सा है उन्होंने निकाला और 20 ऐसी छोटी लोडिंग गाड़ियों का इंतज़ाम किया किराए पे, जो कि वो सामान लेकर आ सकें। वो तमाम राशन कराची रिलीफ ट्रस्ट ने रेंजर्स के हेडक्वार्टर पे पहुंचाया और ये 20 गाड़ियां जो हैं काफ़िले की सूरत में वहाँ पे रात को 2-2:30 बजे गई और वो सामान ये काफ़िले की सूरत में लेके वापस रेहड़ी गोट पहुंची और तमाम पहाड़ों में जो जो घराने जो कि जिनकी निशानदही पहले की गई थी उन तक ये राशन तकसीम किया गया। और ये तकसीम का काम जो है सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग के तमाम तकाज़ों को नज़र में रखते हुए किया गया। इस काम को कामयाबी से करने के लिए हम शुक्रगुजार हैं रेहड़ी गोट के उन तमाम नौजवानों के और कराची रिलीफ ट्रस्ट के जिन्होंने इस काम को मुमकिन बनाया।
That was a great video. I think it really showed the response and what was necessary, in these unprecedented times. Abdullah Sahab, what did you think?
Yes, I am very impressed. जिस तरह के TCF पिछले 25 साल से कर रहा है, इस चैलेंज को भी TCF ने इस प्रोफेशनली उसको हैंडल किया कि आप वाह वाह कहने के अलावा हमारे पास कोई अल्फाज नहीं है। बहुत जबरदस्त काम किया है सिटीजन फाउंडेशन ने।
It's been an adjustment for all of us, like I was saying, responding to the pandemic and getting used to what we now have all referred to as like the new normal, right? And for a lot of us, that meant, for example, suddenly having to work from home. But, for me, it's easy. I can just, wake up and open up my laptop and set up a desk, even if I'm now sharing my office with my husband at home. But, there are a lot of families who don't necessarily have the resources for remote learning. So, Riyaz Sahab, what was it like to have to, work toward the continuity of learning, and especially what kind of adjustments had to be made for families in Pakistan who didn't necessarily have the resources to adapt to the circumstances?
So Sabrina, as you rightly said, life changed for all of us, and many of us were immediately able to move to a life on Zoom, and many schools to move to also a Zoom school, so to speak. But for TCF children, that wasn't possible. If a child is in an urban slum or in a rural area, अगर घर में खाने को नहीं है तो घर में इंटरनेट और कंप्यूटर नहीं होगा. And for a very large majority of children, that was the case. So our young team immediately set out to research what can happen in this kind of a context. And the things we looked at were what happens when there's a civil war, what happens when there's natural disaster, what kind of continuity of learning responses come into play. And two answers came out really as being very strong propositions. The first was the use of mass media, radio or television, and the second was the use of self-led publications or magazines, which would help children learn on their own. In Pakistan, TV is far more prevalent than radio. TV की अब जो पहुंच है वो हर गांव, हर शहर तक है because of cable as well. This was a period when the federal government was starting what they labeled as tele-school, in which they structured an 8-hour day essentially of learning. But the one area where the content was needed was early years. And TCF has done a lot of research, a lot of development over that over the last couple of decades. So I remember we spoke to the federal minister and his team on the 2nd of April to commit that TCF will make a program on early years. And our first episode was done on the 17th of April. And this was called Ilm Ka Angan, the courtyard of learning. So Ilm Ka Angan के नाम से टीवी एपिसोड बना, टीवी प्रोग्राम बना, हर संडे को एपिसोड चलता है जिसमें बच्चों को एक्सरसाइज सिखाई गई, सानिया सईद साहिबा ने आके कहानियां सुनाई, हमने लिटरेसी न्यूमरेसी से गिर्द वीडियोस बनाए, बच्चों ने उसके रिस्पॉन्सेज व्हाट्सएप पे SMS पे दिए, और ये रिस्पॉन्सेज जो है ये पूरे मुल्क से आए. We were actually surprised by the kind of response. The viewership was 6 million people every Sunday around the country, and that was just on PTV. When you add other channels, it went even further more than that. So पूरे मुल्क के बच्चों ने देखा, और अब्दुल्ला भाई हमें रिस्पॉन्स जो है वो पहाड़ों से भी आए, सहरा से भी आए, वादियों से भी आए, पूरे मुल्क के बच्चों ने इन तमाम चीज़ों के जवाब दिए. And we had fun making it, and I do know that children had a lot of fun when they watched the program. The second bit that connected with it was the magazine, which we also labeled Ilm Ka Angan. So ये स्कूलों में मैगजीन छप के गया, जिसमें बच्चों के लिए रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन भी था, पजल्स भी थे, लतीफ़े भी थे, कहानियां भी थी, DIY की एक्टिविटीज भी थी. बट वी ऑल्सो एंगेज फॉर एग्जाम्पल विद मेंटल हेल्थ चैरिटी टू से कि ऐसे आइसोलेशन में बच्चों के लिए मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज क्या होते हैं, और उसके लिए हमने कॉलम बनाया जिसका नाम हमने दिया नदीम चाचा से बातें. तो बच्चे सवाल नदीम चाचा से पूछेंगे, और जो एक काउंसलर आपको बात कहेगा नदीम चाचा उसका जवाब देंगे. फॉर एग्जाम्पल बच्चा कहेगा जी स्कूल बंद है, मैं घर पे पूरा दिन बोर होता रहता हूँ, मैं क्या करूँ, तो नदीम चाचा उसका जवाब देंगे. And that had a response which was also very good, not just to TCF schools, but also this was distributed to schools outside of TCF. So our response really of the TV program and of the magazine helped us reach millions of children around Pakistan and help them really continue their learning in an environment where technology wasn't an option.
That's truly wonderful. Abdullah Sahab, what are your thoughts? Because obviously you've been involved with TCF for such a long time, and you've never encountered anything like the pandemic.
No, actually, but it came as a shock and a surprise to the entire world, and so it was. Houston was no different. लेकिन obviously मैं बड़ा फख्र से ये कह सकता हूँ कि हमारी ह्यूस्टन की जो कम्युनिटी है वो बहुत ही जेनरस है. Despite all the challenges, they kept supporting us, and they still believe in TCF strongly. और हमारे डोनर्स जो हैं वो बिल्कुल पीछे नहीं हटे TCF की मदद करने के लिए. हमारे लिए एक्चुअली 15 महीने पहले एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज ये था कि ये स्कूल बंद तो नहीं हो जाएंगे, यानी लिटरली हमारी रातों की नींद हराम हो गई थी. लेकिन अल्लाह का शुक्र ये है कि जो डोनर्स हैं हमारे, पीपल हु बिलीव इन ट्रू एजुकेशन, वो पीछे नहीं हटे, और TCF ने भी उनको डिसअपॉइंट नहीं किया, बल्कि नए तरीके निकाले किस तरह से बच्चों को पढ़ाते रहें, किस तरह से फैमिलीज को एंगेज रखें. सो आई एम वेरी वेरी प्राउड.
And that's a great point. The work has been made possible because of the contributions of so many people around the world, and especially in Houston. But we're still not over the pandemic, of course. I mean, I know I'm still working from home. No plans to return to the office yet. A lot of things are still closed. So Riaz Sahab, you've talked about how you guys adapted in the immediate aftermath, but now what does the road look like ahead, especially as you continue to weather these challenges in these very unprecedented times?
So many challenges lie ahead. All said and done, in the last 15 months, children have been in school for only 10 odd weeks. There is an accumulated learning loss. Our priority, therefore, is very simple: to get children back into school and to keep them in school. That's it. what we've seen around is that families have financial pressures, and there is a pressure for families who can't pay a fee or who need children to work at home. And our endeavor is to really ensure that we make it as easy as possible for them to ensure that their children continue to come to school. Another dynamic that has evolved is that there are a lot of low-fee private schools around the country. Many of them have closed down, and parents can't afford them anymore. So there is a fallout from that, which is an additional pressure on the TCF network. So we are keeping our doors open, and our singular priority is to get children back into school and to keep them there. And that's where the support of all of the TCF supporters around the world, but particularly our friends in Houston, comes into play. आपने अब्दुल्ला भाई जिक्र किया कि जब हम सोच रहे थे कि होगा क्या, तो इसमें हमने ये भी सोचा कि शायद हम टीचर्स की तनख्वाह ना दे पाए, मगर हमने बहुत सोच विचार के बाद ये फैसला किया वो तनख्वाहें हम देंगे और वक्त पे देंगे। और अभी कुछ दिन पहले मैं दादू के एक स्कूल में गया था और प्रिंसिपल और टीचर्स के साथ बैठा था और मैं जिक्र करने लगा कि हमने कोशिश की कि तनख्वाह हम वक्त पे दें, तो मुझे प्रिंसिपल साहिबा ने टोक के कहा कि सर वक्त पे नहीं दे, वक्त से पहले दी हमें। और टीसीएफ इकलौता स्कूल सिस्टम था जिसने पूरी तनख्वाह दी और वक्त से पहले दी, जहां कई घरानों में सिर्फ वो खातून टीचर थे जिनकी तनख्वाह आ रही थी और घर में कुछ नहीं आ पा रहा। तो ये काम जो है, ये मुझे ऐसा महसूस होता है कि हमारे जो ह्यूस्टन के साथी हैं और पूरे टीसीएफ की दुनिया भर में जो सपोर्टर हैं, उन्होंने अपने दिल नरम रखे, उन्होंने अपने दिल कुशादा रखे और दिल की कुशादगी के साथ इस कारवा का हिस्सा बने रहे और अपनी मदद जारी रखे। और उर्दू में हम कहते हैं कि दिल को दिल से राह होती है, तो जहां उन्होंने अच्छे दिल से इस मदद का बेड़ा उठाया, वहां दूसरे दिल तक जहां तक मदद पहुंची, उस दिल ने बहुत सी दुआएं दी और वो दुआएं शायद आप लोग को सुनने में नहीं आती, मुझे अक्सर सुनने में आती हैं। तो मेरे ख्याल में ये खुलूस नीयत से मदद और खुलूस नीयत से दुआ का सिलसिला जारी रहा, इसकी बिना पे माशाल्लाह बहुत कुछ अच्छा हुआ। एंड whilst all the challenges in play, I think we are extremely hopeful and really seeing in terms of path forward that lots of good will come out of this.
ये आपने जो बात कही है, आप यकीन कीजिए, लोग यहाँ हमारे डोनर्स हैं, वो अक्सर हमको जब डोनेट करते हैं तो कहते हैं कि अब्दुल्ला भाई दुआ में याद रखिएगा। तो मैं उनको ये जवाब देता हूँ, भाई आपके साथ तो 3-4 लाख लोगों की दुआएं आपके साथ हैं, क्योंकि बच्चे, उनके माँ बाप, उनकी सबकी दुआएं आप लोगों के साथ हैं। तो दैट इज अ बिग इम्पैक्ट। अच्छा, एक चीज रियाज ये बताइए आप कि जो कि हमारे लिए अमेरिका में भी चैलेंज है कि ये सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग, मास्क, हाइजीन, हाथ का धोना, इसको टीसीएफ ने किस तरह से अवेयरनेस फैलाई और किस तरह से इस चीज को हैंडल किया?
जी, सो अब्दुल भाई, वी वेंट इमीडिएटली इनटू अ मोड कि हमने अपने स्कूलों में एसओपीज मेंटेन करने हैं। दैट वाज अ वेरी क्लियर डिसीजन एंड बेस्ड ऑन दैट वालिदैन को बुलाया, बच्चों को बुलाया, स्कूल में मास्क का अरेंजमेंट करवाया, हाथ धोने की फैसिलिटीज का अरेंज करवाया। All our classes went for a very long time at half load so that we ensure that social distancing line, no assembly, no break time. So really ensured that within our boundary walls, we not only educate the children on what needs to happen, but role model, show them by example on how life needs to be conducted in these circumstances. And I think that that impact is evident. जब ये स्कूल खुले तो जो सिंध के वजीर तालीम है वो सरप्राइज विजिट पे निकले कराची के गिरदोनवा में स्कूलों में, and TCF was one of the schools he visited. No one knew about it, and he landed there. And his comments on the day were very, very complimentary. He said this is one of those very few schools जहाँ पे SOP पे पूरी तरह in letter and spirit अमल दरामद हो रहा है। और ऐसे कई लोग हमारे स्कूलों में जा चुके हैं unannounced, and we've had very similar feedback. So, mashallah, I think the teams on the ground did us proud and really created an environment which was both fun for the children but also safe.
Very good. Very good.
That's truly wonderful. And, I think this has been a difficult year for everyone, but I have constantly been struck by the resilience of children. I think us adults have complained constantly, but I think the children have not complained. And that's been what's truly inspiring, and all the more reason why we need to support TCF and the work that, Riaz Sahab, you're doing, Abdullah Sahab, that you're doing. Everyone in Houston and around the world is committed, of course, to continuing the fight for access to education. Thank you so much, Riaz Sahab, Mr. Riaz Kamlani, for joining us and for walking us through how TCF responded to the pandemic and the road ahead. We truly appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Riaz Kamlani.
Okay, so not so fast, Abdullah Sahab. We're not letting you go just yet. We obviously talked a lot about how TCF has responded to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic in Pakistan. But you've been involved for such a long time, and especially really the center of the efforts in Houston. So tell us a little bit more about how the Houston community has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically in terms of its support for TCF.
Well, number one, Houston community should be very proud, and they have every reason to be proud that they have made Houston chapter the largest TCF chapter outside of Pakistan in the world, which is, a great feat. और इस 10 साल के अंदर TCF डोनर्स ने TCF के बच्चों को पढ़ाने के लिए $8 million डोनेट किए हैं, $8 million, एंड जो ओवरहेड कॉस्ट है that has remained around 7%, which is amazing. Yani 7% overhead is probably better than, I would say, 98% charities in the world. उसके बाद आप लोगों ने, TCF Houston ने 15 schools बनाए हैं. We have supported 230 schools and have educated 40,000 children. कोई मजाक नहीं है 40,000 बच्चों को पढ़ाना. तो Houston has every reason to take such pride in educating children in Pakistan who otherwise would be on the streets begging or involved in crimes, and you can think of even the worst. So thank you so much, Houston, for what you do for TCF and the education of Pakistani children. अब आप ये देखिए कि 2020, which was a disaster year for the world because of COVID, Houston community gave TCF more money than any other year. The Houston community gave us more than $1 million. Shouldn't we be proud? Yes, every reason to be proud, Houston. तो आप ये देखिए कि आप लोगों ने इस मुश्किल वक्त के अंदर TCF की मदद की, और जिसकी वजह से हम लोग जो हैं इस काबिल हुए कि हमारा कोई बच्चा जो है वो ड्रॉप आउट ना हो. एंड वी होप दैट दिस थिंग कंटिन्यूज. और मैं अब आपको जरा सा बताता हूं कि मुख्तलिफ तरीके हैं डोनेट करने के. $120 pays for the education of a child for 1 year, which is $10 a month. भाई मैं जाता हूं बन कबाब खाने के लिए, वो बन कबाब में मेरे $15 खर्च हो जाते हैं. यानी $15 में 1.5 बच्चा पड़ जाए. तो and that's one time, and $10 for a month. आप ये देखिए हफ्ते में मैं 4-5 तो बन कबाब खा लेता हूं. तो $120 for a year. उसके बाद आप ये देखिए कि you can sponsor a whole school's operating cost for $20,000, जिसमें के 180 बच्चे पढ़ते हैं. Quality education, you can sponsor a classroom for $3,200. And look at this, you can sponsor the education of a child for 11 years, that is from kindergarten to 10th grade, for only $1,300. $1,300, जो कि little over $100 a month. You can educate a child from kindergarten to 10th grade. That means changing the life of a person. And when you change the life of one person, you are changing the life of coming generations. That is the impact of education. फिर आप ये देखिए कि इम्पैक्ट जो एजुकेशन का है, वो एक मैं कहानी आपको बताता हूं. एक यूनिवर्सिटी में लिखा था, जो आपने बहुत सारे लोगों ने पढ़ा भी होगा, कि किसी मुल्क को अगर आपको तबाह करना है तो उसको बॉम्ब करने की जरूरत नहीं है. आप उसका एजुकेशन सिस्टम जो है उसको तबाह कर दें, वो मुल्क अपने आप तबाह हो जाएगा. तो लेट अस एजुकेट पाकिस्तान, एंड यू कैन डू इट. प्लीज डोनेट जेनरसली फॉर ऑल दोस थिंग्स. अब आपको मैं एक और कहानी सुनाता हूं, जो कि मैं आपको मालूम है कि TCF USA की तरफ से मुख्तलिफ शहरों में ट्रैवल करता हूं टू ब्रिंग अवेयरनेस, इंट्रोड्यूसिंग TCF. तो मैं कोलंबस एटलांटा में एक प्रेजेंटेशन कर रहा था। एक डॉक्टर, उनकी बेगम है, उन्होंने अपने कोई 25 कपल्स को बुलाया था टू ब्रिंग अवेयरनेस टू टीसीएफ। तो अवेयरनेस के बाद, अब मेरी प्रेजेंटेशन के बाद, एक खातून, जहां वो अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन खातून आई थी, टू हेल्प एंड टू डू डिशेस इन द किचन, उन्होंने मुझे किचन में बुलाया और मेरे हाथ में उन्होंने $100 कैश दिए। मुझसे कहने लगी कि मिस्टर जाफरी, दिस इज ऑल आई हैव, प्लीज टेक इट फॉर द चिल्ड्रन ऑफ पाकिस्तान। आप यकीन कीजिए, मेरे आंखों में आंसू आ गए। दैट लेडी probably needed that $100 as much as our children, but she decided to donate that $100 for the children of Pakistan. This is the passion people have for education. Or
that's truly extraordinary, and there are so many different ways also that people can donate. Obviously, I mean, we are doing everything a little bit differently, and obviously with COVID-19, this whole event looks different than the usual in-person gala. But because we're doing this drive-in movie night, if you blink your lights, if you flash your lights, then someone will come and take your information. If you want to make a donation, then that's one way you can do so in person, is if you flash your headlights, then someone will come and take your information. And then, of course, there is the opportunity to donate through text. If you text TCF 2021 to 41444, so that's TCF 2021, TCF 2021, you text that to 41444. So, that's just some of the ways I know. Abdullah Sahab, I'm sure you've been doing this for a long time, can share some other stories about the generosity of Houston and all the ways they can donate.
If someone flashes their light to ask water, I'm going to put a penalty on them. So they better flash their light so that our volunteer can go pick up their check or their pledge, whatever that is. So there are so many stories of TCF. We were visiting Pakistan, a school, and then I also decided, my wife and I, Anjum and I, we went to visit a family. तो वहां पर एक बच्चे की माँ ने कहा कि ये बच्चे ने हमको दांत मांजना सिखाया है. The hygiene is so important for TCF students. That lady, at the age of 40, she had brushed her teeth for the first time because TCF taught the child, and the child went home and he brought that awareness to his house and told his parents that they should brush their teeth. This small thing, but this has, the impact in hygiene makes a big difference. So there are so many stories that TCF, your agents of positive change, TCF पैदा कर रहा है.
That's such an important point too, because we think about it as educating the children, but especially for a lot of these underprivileged families, what you're doing is you are expanding access to education for the entire family. And inshallah, given the number of children that have been able to graduate from TCF schools, then they will be able to have a better future and provide for their families, so that maybe their families don't have to do the same kind of manual labor, the kind of menial work that they've been doing to get by. Those children really are, having a generational impact, as you say. And I think, I had the opportunity as well when I went to Karachi a couple of years ago to visit one of the TCF schools. And I talked about this earlier in the evening as well. It was just really striking how happy the children were to be there. It brought tears to my eyes because they were just so excited to go to school and to learn. And, those of us who have always had access to education, we take it for granted. You would come up with excuses so that you didn't have to go to school. Oh, I don't feel well. I don't feel like going today, right? These children, it meant so much to them to be able to go and to learn. And that, I think, was something that really puts it all into perspective, the impact that these donations can have, especially given the pandemic as well, and the way in which it's affected people, here in the US and around the world, let alone in Pakistan, where I know I was reading the other day that the World Bank was saying they expect something like 1 million children to drop out of school. And they identified Pakistan as being one of the places most severely impacted by COVID-19 and this education gap, where a lot of these underprivileged families will decide that they just don't need to send their children to school at all. Oftentimes girls are the ones we've seen in these developing countries who are the first to lose out on education. So that's not something that we want to happen. If we wouldn't want it for our children here, I know, Abdullah Sahab, you'd agree, we wouldn't want it for the children in Pakistan.
Well, Houston, make sure none of your children drop out. So the only way they can do it is keep donating the way you have done it in the past 10 years. Then let me मैं एक शेर जरूर सुनाता हूँ फंडरेजर के अंदर, वो आज फिर दोबारा सुनाऊंगा मैं. लोग मुझसे कहते हैं कि आप 74 के हैं, डोंट यू फील ओल्ड. तो एक शेर है उसके ऊपर कि ये जो TCF के बच्चे हैं, ये मेरे बच्चे हैं, ये हमारे बच्चे हैं, कि मुझको थकने नहीं देता है जरूरत का पहाड़, मुझको थकने नहीं देता है जरूरत का पहाड़, मेरे बच्चे मुझे बूढ़ा नहीं होने देते. My children are keeping me young. The TCF children are keeping me young, and they give me so much energy that I feel young.
That's beautiful. You don't look a day over 30. But think about, I was thinking, I had the opportunity to MC this gala in 2019. It seems like a lifetime ago because of the way in which the world has changed. And I just remember, it was actually really surprising when I walked in, because I think there was something like 1,000 people in attendance.
Right.
And of course, we wish we could have that event, the in-person event. But what I was really struck by is that, everyone was not only there, of course, to meet one another and support this cause, but they were also very generous with their donations. And, that slide, I think, that you showed really spoke to how even in 2020, a year in which the whole world was affected unlike any other, Houston actually gave more money than they had given any year before.
Exactly.
So, I'm sure you have many stories, Abdullah Sahab, from these galas over the years. And if there's anything that stands out, it's probably a good time to remind people, because the work, as we said, continues and the pandemic is far from over. We need this now more than ever before.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt, not a bit of doubt, that Houston will not keep their donations as they have in the past 10 years. So Houston, let us do it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And, I just wanted to say it's really something that, again, we take for granted. But, you said something important in the beginning about how, you have like a bun kebab, right? It costs something like $15. Maybe you said you have it 4 or 5 times a week. So we might need to talk about scaling that back. But I think there are a lot of us who spend money, right, on material things, and that's okay. Of course, we have the right to enjoy our lives, but you think about what that money can do for someone else. If you sacrifice that Starbucks or that extra bit of shopping that you were going to do, going to get your nails done, all the kinds of things that we spend money on, and it piles up, right? Those expenses pile up. And, we could, as you said, build an entire school with that money. If you think about the accumulation over the year, right, of the kind of things that you spend money on, you can educate a child for 11 years with that money. You can build a classroom. There's so much that you can do. There's so far that money goes so much farther, I think, don't you think?
Absolutely. And now look at that. Our children, they're working for the World Bank. They're engineers. They become doctors. They are, right now in the residency program in the United States. These children, if you looked at them a few years ago, I don't think they could dream that they would be in a residency program in the United States. So this is the impact of education.
And we've had some of them speak, right, at these galas. I know when I attended the one in Houston in 2019, we heard from some of the students who had graduated from TCF schools, and they have gone on to do some really great things. It's also worth keeping in mind that Ramzan is coming up as well. So this is going to be, a time of giving, a time of reflection, and a time when a lot of these families will need that extra bit of help.
Absolutely. Sabrina, you mentioned about Ramadan. So we also, tell our donors because many people believe in donating during the month of Ramadan.
Mm.
So just give us a pledge. Give us a pledge now and donate in the month of Ramadan. We will come and pick up your check, or you just mail your check in the month of Ramadan. So that is always an option, because most of our donations do come in that holy month. So that is a good reminder by you. Yeah.
You know, and I think, as we said earlier, there's many ways in which you can donate. So don't forget that, you know, if you flash your lights, just
Yeah.
because we're doing things a bit differently, we're all adjusting, as we've talked about this evening. Then if you flash your headlights, then someone will come by and, you know, they can either take a check or they can take your credit card information. You know, if you just want to make a pledge, there are lots of ways in which you can donate. And don't forget, of course, to also text TCF 2021 TCF 2021 to 41444. And you can also donate online. You know, we have this information up on screen. You can mail your checks. You can call the hotline. There are lots of different ways to do it nowadays. We try to keep up with the times. Abdullah Saab, did you have any kind of closing thoughts for everyone? I know we've talked a lot about the importance of giving, but perhaps something that you really want everyone to take away with them.
Well, I would like Houston to remain Houston. Houston to remain the largest chapter in the world. Houston to take pride in what they have done in the past decade. And they should actually be determined to do the same thing in the next decade. This is what I expect Houston to do. Thank you so much, Houston.
Thank you so much, everyone. And again, you know, we really appreciate everyone's generosity. You know, I know we keep saying it, but it really goes really far. The money that you're giving, if you think about everything that these children are being able to do and the kind of opportunity they have, you know, Abdullah Saab said it best when he talked about how, you know, access to education really holds the key, not just for these children, but for their entire families. It truly has a generational impact. And as we all think about the hardships that, you know, we've faced during the COVID-19 pandemic, you think about the kind of impact that it's had on these families in Pakistan. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And please remember to donate. And again, flash your lights and we'll be over
and
to
if
take the
someone
donation.
wants me to go and pick up the check from their car, they can honk. There'll be a $500 fee.
Thank you so much, everyone. Abdullah Saab, thank you so much for joining us this evening. As always, you know, your commitment to TCF has been extraordinary, and you inspire all of us, and you always keep us on our toes as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing for us and for TCF.
It is such a pleasure. I'm honored to be a part of the Citizens Foundation, and I take absolute pride in being, you know, a little help to the less privileged children of Pakistan. It is such an honor. अब कब्र इसके कि हम लोग जाएं, अब मेरे ख्याल से बच्चों को हम लेके जाते हैं एक कहानी सुनाने के लिए, सानिया सईद साहिबा की. तो बच्चों, now listen to this beautiful story. This is very, very popular in Pakistan.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, आदाब। मैं हूँ कहानी आंटी। पहचान तो गए होंगे, नहीं पहचाना तो इसका मतलब है आपने कहानियां नहीं देखी। मैं इस बात से बहुत नाखुश हूँ। कोविड में क्या करते रहे आप लोग? हमने इतनी मेहनत से इल्म का आंगन में आपके लिए ये कहानियां जोड़ी, इन्हें सुनाया, फिर इन्हें एनिमेट किया, और आपने नहीं देखी। ओह, देखी? Good. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you, छोटे वाले दोस्तों, little humans. Thank you very much for enjoying the stories. But the big humans, I want to talk to you also right now. जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, पाकिस्तान में कोविड की तीसरी लहर आ चुकी है। आनी नहीं चाहिए थी, मगर well, किसी लम्हे भी दोबारा से लॉकडाउन हो सकता है। और ऑलरेडी पिछले लॉकडाउन से जो हमें नुकसान हो चुका, उसकी ही भरपाई हम अभी नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। आपने सुना होगा, पाकिस्तान उन 12 ममालिक में से होगा जहां सबसे ज्यादा बच्चे स्कूलों से ड्रॉप आउट होंगे और शायद वो कभी वापस स्कूल ना जा सकें। ये वक्त, ये लॉकडाउन्स, ये माशी जो मजबूरी कह लीजिए, हम जिस तरह से माशी तौर पे पिछड़े हुए तो थे ही, मजीद जो इसमें जवाल आया है, उसकी वजह से TCF और इसकी जैसी दूसरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जो चाहे तालीम के शोबे में काम कर रही हैं या किसी और शोबे में काम कर रही हैं, उनकी बहुत सारी मेहनत बहुत साल पीछे चली जाएगी। पीछे तो नहीं जाना है, ये तो बहुत ज्यादा बड़ा नुकसान हो जाएगा, क्योंकि हमारे पाकिस्तान में जो लिटिल ह्यूमंस हैं, अगर वो स्कूल नहीं जाएंगे तो वो फ्यूचर में हमें एडल्ट्स होकर मिलेंगे और हमें उनके साथ डील करना होगा, और वो इल इक्विप्ड होंगे, वो अनएजुकेटेड होंगे, अनस्किल्ड होंगे, और ये तो सिर्फ प्रॉब्लम्स में इजाफा ही कर सकता है। आई मीन इट डजंट इवन साउंड राइट, इट्स द 21st सेंचुरी। तो ताकि ये ना हो, और जो अनएजुकेटेड पॉपुलेशन की वजह से प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट होते हैं, जिनका बज़ाहिर या बराह रास्त ताल्लुक तालीम से नजर नहीं आता लेकिन होता है। हम उनके साथ नहीं कोप कर पाएंगे अगर हमारे ये बच्चे आज वापस स्कूल नहीं जा सके। इसके लिए हमें आपकी मदद की ज़रूरत होगी। हर साल की तरह इस साल भी आपसे दरख्वास्त है, मूवी ज़रूर इंजॉय कीजिए। एक्टर इन लॉ बहुत ज़बरदस्त फिल्म है, लेकिन साथ ही साथ जितना ज़्यादा हो सके डोनेट कीजिए। अगर पैसों से कर सकते हैं तो नथिंग लाइक इट, बट अगर नहीं कर सकते तो इन काइंड कर सकते हैं। यहाँ किसी को मोटिवेट कर सकते हैं कि वो किसी तरह TCF की कोशिशों में शामिल हो। Anything that you can think of, TCF welcomes all ideas. We are always asking for ideas. So please do whatever you can. And thank you very much for coming out today and watching this movie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. We are truly honored that you adapted to these unusual times and joined us for this drive-in movie night. We do hope that, inshallah, maybe even next year we will be able to return to our in-person annual gala, and we will look forward to seeing you there. But thank you once again for joining us. Now, enjoy this movie with your families and have a great evening.